The thing we learned early on, and that will continue to be true, is that we have to be able to pivot. We have to be super flexible because you don't know what's coming around the corner.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North, and today my guest is Kristy Sammis, co-CEO and founder of Clever. Kristy, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to chat today.
I am excited as well because you have an incredible background as a marketer, a leader, a speaker, and an entrepreneur. You were also the founding chair of the Influencer Marketing Association, which is outstanding. Tell us a little bit about Clever and what sets it apart in the marketplace.
Well, so Clever, we call the influencer marketing agency because we're pretty sure we founded it as the very first full-service influencer marketing agency ever. We were founded in 2009, so over about almost 13 years ago. We didn't know what to call ourselves. We were basically, operating this agency that sat between brands that wanted to reach out to bloggers. There was just bloggers at the time, and the bloggers who wanted to be reached out to, but were hard to find. And so we my co-founders and I were all social media users and bloggers ourselves, but as a hobby, not as a profession, and realized that there was a lot of opportunity here, especially at the time for women. Brands were having a tough time understanding how to get to, this whole new world of social media influencers before we were calling them influencers. And so, we saw an opportunity in the marketplace and decided to put this organization together that both helped the brands and helped the then bloggers, the now influencers.
What are some of the opportunities and challenges that you see with influencer marketing?
I mean, there's a lot of speculation. The thing we learned early on, and that will continue to be true, is that we have to be able to pivot. We have to be super flexible because you don't know what's coming around the corner. We weren't really talking about TikTok 2 years ago, or brands weren't anyway. And that's it. It's a whole entity. So we go where the influencers go, and that's often driven by, new platforms. So we have to, again, stay flexible and open and kind of figure out what's coming next. I think one of the big challenges is that that's really hard. That's fine when you're kind of in a smaller business mindset, but for big brands, CMOs, keeping up with where influencers are headed is really hard because it changes really quickly. And right now, especially, we're kind of at this point where a lot of the most popular influencers are really off the cuff and really hard to nail down and aren't corporate and aren't traditionally brand safe.
Would you say that with your experience, 13 years ago, when you started this, I would assume that it started with a lot of the younger generation that was very active on social media. So some of the millennials and perhaps some of the Gen Z earlier in their lifespans. Do you see it kind of moving up the chain, up the timeline, if you will, into Gen X and even baby boomers?
Yes. And I actually, when we started, I would say most of our influencers were, I would say, kind of the tail end of Gen X. And elder millennials. That was really who was writing when we started. And when we started, we were focused primarily on women, primarily on moms, mostly because that's where our brands wanted to be. That's who they wanted to target. At the time, again, 13 years ago, it was primarily CPG brands that were really interested in this space. Obviously, that's changed now. I think brands are looking to go both up and down. We know that boomers have expendable income. We also know that they mostly spend their time on Facebook. So, that's entirely different from the kids who are using WhatsApp and TikTok and Snap, who are entirely different, and actually Reddit. I just realized Reddit is coming up for the younger generation.
You recently spoke on a panel at South by Southwest titled Brands and Creators, How to Play by the FTC's Rules. You and your fellow panelists shared insights on how brands, creators, other stakeholders can stay out of the FTC's crosshairs, if you will, while partnering to deliver compelling branded content. With the influencer marketing tracking to exactly what you just said, $15 billion this year, What are some of the pitfalls and opportunities that creators, brands, agencies, and platforms should be aware of when it comes to the Federal Trade Commission's rules for sponsored content?
The FTC is continuously getting stricter, paying more attention to what's going on. In general, the advice or the important thing is to just make sure that you're disclosing any sort of material relationship you have with a brand. You as an influencer, disclose any relationship you have with a brand and vice versa. Make sure that the people who are reading your review or your rave or whatever you're posting understand that you have a relationship with the brand. That's not that hard to do, but there's definitely lots of people who come to this space thinking that they want to be kind of shady about it or that they want to kind of skirt that. And it almost always comes back to bite them, like really almost always. People really, this has been true since day one of operating in this world. People love to find out you've done something shady and put you on blast for having done it. So you want to avoid that, and it's not hard to avoid. And the craziest thing to me is that, usually it's the brands who are asking the influencers not to disclose if that ever happens. They're like, we just want to seem like this is organic. But what's crazy to me now is that there are actually people pretending that they've been sponsored because it makes them seem more legitimate.
You recently did a great interview online where you talked about wanting to speak to the global heads of media agencies in general about de-pinkifying their media outreach and their marketing to women and girls. With the rise of gender-neutral marketing, do you see this de-pinkifying starting to happen, or are we still not quite there yet?
We've seen so much change in conversation around social issues in the last 2 years, especially. When the pandemic hit and then we had the explosion of the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of other social issues came up as part of that. And I really think that was where the girl boss and like cutesy girl marketing kind of fell by the wayside. And it's just like, let's just, I don't know exactly where it's going, but it seems to be evening out, which isn't to say that the pay gap doesn't still exist, which doesn't excuse any of the, all the issues that women face, we're still facing, but we're talking about it in a little bit of a different way.
With so many companies now pivoting to go back into the office, feeling like that's where everything should go back to, what works for your company's Clever's work culture, and what tips would you offer companies who are perhaps on the fence about should we go back to the office or should we stay virtual?
Well, I understand the compulsion to have a working space. And I think there are people who want to go to the office, if not every day, some of the days. There are definitely times when I have to leave my house. But really, if you get good at working virtually, if you get good at working online, you can still have a really strong culture. You can still have really good FaceTime, not as great as in person, but really great FaceTime. The benefits for employer, one of our greatest, as a business owner, one of the best parts about having a virtual workforce, aside from not paying exorbitant fees here in the Bay Area, is that we hire from all over the country. Our team is literally all over the country, and we're only 24 people right now. But we have people all over, and it's great. It's, so they can live where they want to live. And actually, we had a lot of people who were in Northern California who moved once they were like, hey, I can live anywhere. I'm not going to pay these crazy rents anymore.
Have you talked to other CEOs, other leaders about sort of this is why we're transparent and this is what it yields and this is the positive results we get from it?
Yes, of course we do. And my co-CEO, Kat Lincoln, is part of a CEO group that has, been really formative in our decisions. And I think I will, without having ever attended that particular group, I will say, I think we seem a little crazy to everybody, but we're used to that. We've kind of been in that space since the beginning when we couldn't even explain to our friends and our family what our company even does. So, we're used to being the oddballs, but I think that we've never lost sleep by making bad decisions about our people or how we operate. And so we're not hiding anything. There's nothing surprising. We haven't done anything to hide.
What's the best professional or personal advice that you've ever heard or been given?
Well, my favorite personal advice is when, is Maya Angelou, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But from a professional advice standpoint, get a good lawyer. It's not creative. It's not funny. It's not quippy, but it's accurate and saved our bacon. We found an amazing attorney when we first started who set some things up for us that have borne out, 12 years later. So spending that money was definitely the best money we ever spent when we weren't sure we could afford it.
And lastly, is there a book, a blog, or a podcast that you're excited about that you'd like to share with our viewers?
My favorite, I love audiobooks. I have them going all the time, and I love really like page-turning murder mystery, suspense thrillers. So I was blown away by Lucy Foley's The Guest List a couple years ago, and she's a new one out called The Paris Apartment, which I just finished, and I was really sad it was over. But to assuage my feelings of sadness, Harlan Coben has a new book out. He's probably my favorite author of all time. Not super fancy stuff. I was an English literature major, but now I'm reading, page turners. But Harlan Coben is a fantastic mystery writer, and his newest just came out. It's called The Match, and I'm excited to get started on that.
My guest today has been Kristy Sammis, co-CEO and founder of Clever. Kristy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.